CDW. The session is now in session.
Welcome to 11th for the court ceremony to administer the oath a short period of time. My first responsibility is to
oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the darkest red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
thank you. This ceremony today is for the administration of the oaths of office to our newly elected Chief Justice and to our newly elected justices from the past campaign election cycle. Before we begin with that process, I understand the governor is available and wants to address us with his words. Governor Inslee, please. Good morning.
Is that working for you, Mr. Justice?
It is working.
Thank you very much. If it pleases the court, thank you for an opportunity to address you today under these most unique circumstances. We know that we'd like to congratulate the Chief Justice Stephen Gonzalez and our new justices at the beginning of your terms. I know this is an exciting time. It would be even under, quote, normal circumstances. I would like to address you for a few moments to set the stage for some of your future deliberations. We know that the last 2 months have reminded us all of the importance of an independent judiciary and maintaining this republic where everyone has a voice. You know that I have been vocal and insistent on that while I have served in this particular office. In the aftermath of a decisive presidential election, we know that powerful interests in the executive and legislative branches have sought to deceive the public and to undermine the will of the voters. These efforts inexorably came to the courts for resolution, and they have resolved those issues. Never in American history has it been more clear that the judicial branch is the last bulwark against coordinated efforts to undermine our elections and potentially change the balance of power in government against the expressed will of the American people. And it was the judicial branch, justices such as yourself, appointed by all different flavor of people in elected office, who applied the law independently and preserved the rights of all of us, both on the winning and the losing side, to express our will as Americans. This value of all Americans get from an independent judiciary should be never more clear than it is this morning, and why it must stay in that fashion. The public's confidence in these institutions is part of what lends the courts their credibility and legitimacy. And a credible and legitimate judiciary also means the benches where judges reflect the diverse communities they serve. And I'm proud to say that our courts in Washington State are more diverse than they have ever been, but we know that there is more work to do. We need to keep our assurances to litigants and others caught up in the judicial system, that they will feel confident that the system is fair and equitable, both in its operations and its decision-making. And I'm pleased to know that these matters mean a great deal to the current justices of the Supreme Court. And Washingtonians, I believe, should be proud to boast of our judiciary that has such integrity, such selflessness, and such diversity. Now, as I've said, the judicial system is fundamental to our liberties. And timeliness in decision-making is fundamental, I believe, to maintaining confidence in the judicial system. Now, we know that challenges to timeliness will only increase during this period of the new way of making decisions. But I do hope that while litigants, as well as other branches of government, wait for decisions, it's important to realize that the other branches of government also await decisions. And therefore, I heartily, vigorously, and strenuously encourage the court to continue to adopt measures to assure timely decision-making for the benefit of all. To that end, the court has been very versatile in carrying out its business during the pandemic. You've adopted innovations like telehearing, electronic filings, and more via the internet to keep the wheels of justice turning in a safe way. We are appreciative of the court's efforts in maintaining transparency and openness using your innovative skills. And in June, in the thick of the justice protests that roused the conscience of the nation, and it has been roused, this court put out a statement affirming the injustices Black people have faced in our nation and continue to face. You said those injustices are not relics of the past, and that the, quote, the legal community must recognize that we all bear responsibility for this ongoing injustice and that we are capable of taking new steps to address it, if only we have the courage and the will. This holistic view of justice and fairness is exactly what Washington State and the rest of the nation need right now, as we continue to aspire to a greater model for our residents and for the rest of the world. And I applaud your efforts in this regard. I do believe that the consciousness of our community and our nation has been raised in the last several months, and that this is a moment, a magic moment, to continue taking big steps along the arc of the moral universe. So congratulations on taking your oaths. I know you will serve Washingtonians well, and be well. Please take care of your own health and your family's health. It's pretty important to the functioning of democracy. Thank you very much for a chance to speak to you. Take care.
Thank you, Governor, for taking your time to address the court. We appreciate the words you have passed on and embrace them. Challenges are many, and as you mentioned, we are eager to face them and resolve them. And as I mentioned before, my name is Charles Johnson. I'm the Associate Chief Justice, and my role here is short in that I have the responsibility when our Chief Justice position rotates to administer the oath to the incoming Chief Justice, Stephen Gonzalez in this case. And that will take place in a couple minutes. But first, I'm going to call upon Lucio Maldonado, an attorney, to introduce Justice Gonzalez to the court and to the public.
Thank you, Justice Johnson, Governor Inslee, members of the court. It's a pleasure and honor to be here today. For the many of you who don't know me, my name is Lucio Maldonado. I grew up on a small farm in Eastern Washington, which I worked on my whole life, including during college summers, until the demands of law school took me to the library. I now practice law at Core Cronin, a litigation firm in Seattle. I met Justice Gonzalez my final year of law school. He was in the middle of a contested election year and also was teaching an intensive week-long state constitutional law course at Gonzaga Law. As a third-year law student, I took the course as taking a class from a sitting Supreme Court justice seemed like a good use of my time. Also, it was a 1-credit course, and I needed 1 more credit to graduate. After the year was over, and after I took the bar exam, I received a call from an unknown 206 number. As chance would have it, I was in the hospital with my brother and sister-in-law who were expecting their firstborn child. The call was from Justice Gonzalez's assistant, Justin Abbasi, who asked me to send in application materials if I was interested in a clerkship interview. Given the course that I had recently taken with him and the prospect of clerking for a Supreme Court justice, I jumped at the opportunity. And as happy as I was for my brother and sister-in-law, I left the hospital immediately and went home to submit my application. I interviewed the following Monday. After the interview, Justice Gonzalez saw me out of the court and I walked to my car. Before I had my seatbelt on, Justice Gonzalez called, offering me the job. I accepted on the spot. Justice Gonzalez and I quickly forged a strong relationship, founded largely on quick wit, me enduring his painful puns, and our shared love for rancheras, especially Vicente Fernandez. An example of our quick-witted back and forth is the day I found out he was elected chief, and I texted him, "Chief Justice Gonzalez?" ? Exclamation point. He quickly responded, "That's jefe to you." I learned a lot from my time at the court. A course from Justice Gonzalez, but I felt especially lucky for the rest of the staff in our chambers as well. Namely, Justin Abbasi, his judicial assistant, who was most likely the most qualified, overqualified assistant of all time, holding a Master of Library and Information Science degree, not to mention a law degree. And my co-clerk, Laura Anglin, a career clerk who has faithfully served the court and the people of Washington for over 20 years. The cases we took on at the court were complex legal issues. On the criminal side, we considered issues such as the constitutionality of the death penalty and the constitutionality of life sentences for juveniles. On the civil side, we considered full faith and credit issues between sister states, the extent to which the Washington legislature can absolve the state of liability and tort, and faithless elector issues in presidential elections. We looked carefully at these issues, analyzing all the precedent and policy supporting the current state of the law. In doing so, we of course considered the briefing of the parties, giving due respect to the parties and their arguments, regardless of whatever personal views we may hold. Justice Gonzalez was exceptional at this. He would likely tell you there are several reasons why he is exceptional, but the reason that stood out to me is because he has a relentless and genuine commitment to leading by example. He sets an example by listening, by consistently giving every case and issue the attention it deserves, and faithfully carrying out his duties as a justice, and by being kind. But he also sets an example when doing so is not easy. He does so by refusing to blindly follow. He sets an example by challenging the norms and actively challenging people to speak up for and stand for what they believe is correct, even if it is difficult or frightening. And he continues setting these examples by challenging the status quo in the historically difficult areas of gender and racial diversity and inclusion. One instance of these challenges that comes to mind is of a keynote speech he gave when he read a quote from a widely beloved American politician and challenged the listeners to guess who it was. The quote read, "I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. I am not, nor ever have been, in favor of making voters of jurors or Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people." The quote was from Abraham Lincoln, prior to becoming president, during debates in his unsuccessful campaign for a seat in the US Senate. Justice Gonzalez went on to ask the audience to ponder where in your current thinking in years from now, you will seem as backward as Lincoln now does to us. He asked the audience whether they were like the politician, Abraham Lincoln, saying and thinking what is popular, ignoring how wrong it is and how wrong you know it is, in an attempt to get yourself ahead. That was a pretty serious question to ask of that audience. So today I figured it was my chance to repay the favor and give him a taste of his own medicine. And I'm not going to let him off the hook. So I want to take this opportunity to challenge Justice Gonzalez. I challenge Justice Gonzalez to address and acknowledge his imperfections. I challenge him to not be hindered by the ever-growing egos that so often seem to accompany those in positions of power. I challenge him to keep sharp his listening abilities, especially with regard to those in his chambers when considering important issues before the court. I challenge him to admit when he has made a mistake and to listen to the other justices, particularly when they may have a better grasp on the issues before the court than he does. I challenge Justice Gonzalez to remain authentic and to keep fighting for what he believes is correct, even when doing so is difficult and unpopular. In the keynote speech that I referenced earlier, Justice Gonzalez asked the audience what a strong Latino or Latina leader would look like. Who is that? Who can we all, and especially the youth, look to say, I want to be like her or him? I challenge Justice Gonzalez to answer his own question and be that strong Latino leader. And finally, encompassing all the foregoing challenges, I challenge Justice Gonzalez to excel in his position as the first Chief Justice of color in Washington State Supreme Court history. And with those challenges, I hereby would like to officially present my mentor and friend, Esteban Carlos Gonzalez, as the Chief Justice of the Washington State Supreme Court.
Thank you. And it only extends to the time I could administer and pass the responsibilities to preside with. And repeat after me. I, and state your prayer,
Do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Washington,
and the Constitution of the State of Washington,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of the office of Chief Justice
of the office of Chief Justice
of the Supreme Court of the State of Washington
of the Supreme Court of the State of Washington
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you, Justice Johnson, for your service and for opening this ceremony. And to Jose Iniguez, thank you for your beautiful voice and your commitment to music and to youth mentorship. Thank you, Lucio, for your kind words. I take your challenges. I appreciate them very much. I take that ego can sometimes be an issue. And I just want to say that I see myself in you. I also want to thank you, Lucio, for standing in to represent all those I've had the privilege to work with and mentor. I want to thank Governor Inslee for his remarks, for his leadership, for the caliber of judicial officer he has appointed, not just to this court, but throughout the state of Washington. I know how deeply you understand the importance of the rule of law. We share that commitment. I assure you that our opinions are issuing at a steady clip, and we are not delaying justice, and we'll make sure, to the best of our ability, with the help, of course, of the funding we'll get from the legislative branch, we'll make sure that the entire judicial branch can keep up with what we know is going to be a backlog as we emerge from this pandemic. Now, on a more somber note, on behalf of the Supreme Court and the entire judicial branch, I wanted to take a moment to remember Judge Charles V. Johnson, retired from the Superior Court in King County, who passed away this last month. He was a hero and a giant, not just in the legal community, but well beyond. Judge Johnson. Thank you. I also want to thank, well, the people for electing me to this spot and my colleagues for electing me as chief. I'm very grateful for the examples of the chiefs I've had the privilege to serve with here on the court and just before, Justices Alexander, Justice Madsen, Justice Fairhurst, and Justice Stevens, who encountered and met tremendous challenges during this year, unprecedented challenges for the judicial branch, and we very much appreciate your service. I'm grateful, of course, to my family, especially my wife, Michelle. Appreciate very much your love and your support, and my mother, who taught me both courage and kindness. I want to make sure that we remember those here on staff at the court who are helping make this possible today. There's a lot to coordinate, and we know how hard Guy Rosser, our bailiff, Reza Pazuki, who has stepped in to be our technical magician here with little training and doing an exemplary job, to my judicial assistant, Ashley Lipford, to Susan Carlson and Aaron Lennon in the clerk's office, to Tyler Williamson. Thank you all for that work. And to my clerks, Laura Anglin and Alexia Diorio. The list of people to thank is too long. Forgive me for not mentioning everyone. We appreciate everyone very much, but in the interests of expedience, let's move along. We faced a lot this year. I predict that there'll be more to face before we're out of this difficult situation that we're in. But we promise to follow through with our commitment to eradicate bias in the justice system, not just to point it out and recognize that it exists, but to come up with actual solutions and changes, structural and small, so that we actually can do this thing that we say we care about. And I know that our Minority and Justice Commission is working hard on this, as is our Gender and Justice Commission, the Access to Justice Board, the entire judicial branch, as well as lawyers and others affected. We'll work together to make sure that we actually make the change that we're promising and that we promised in our letter of June 4th last year. When we emerge from this pandemic, and we will carry forward the lessons that we have learned to make justice more accessible so that people can file their paperwork remotely, so that there are fewer required trips to the courthouse, and perhaps even so that we can jail and incarcerate fewer people and find better ways to integrate people into the community, to welcome them when they're done serving their sentence, and to keep them out in the first place. I'm very proud of our court. We're a very diverse group of people. We have 7 women, we have 3 women of color, we have 3 Jewish justices, the first Jewish chief, the first chief of color, a Black woman, 2 lesbians, 1 straight white man, and we'll make sure he feels comfortable with the rest of us, and 9 people with strong opinions and views who are not afraid to express them. Diversity might not always make us more efficient, but I think it will improve the quality and depth of our debates, our discussions, and our opinions. And we're not here to complain about the barriers we have faced and may face. We're here to remove them for the people who follow us, to hold the door open. It was my pleasure to administer the oath to Justice Whitener in a private ceremony at her request last Friday. I'm sorry that during this pandemic, we're not able to adequately welcome her to this court. When we're able to return in person, I hope that we can find a way to celebrate her historic membership on this court. I've taken enough of your time. Thank you very much for this honor. I'm deeply touched by the support of everyone. And I'd like now for us to proceed to the presentation of Justice Raquel Montoya Lewis. It's my pleasure to call on retired Judge Charles R. Snyder to present Justice Montoya Lewis. Judge Snyder.
Thank you, Chief Justice Gonzalez, and may it please the court. I feel privileged today to have been asked to introduce my good friend, my former benchmate, and an extraordinary justice, Raquel Montoya Lewis. Justice Montoya Lewis has a most impressive resume, and it includes service as a judge for multiple tribal courts, including as chief judge for the Upper Skagit Indian Tribe, the Nooksack Indian Tribe, and the Lummi Nation. She was a Whatcom County Superior Court judge for 5 years, where I was able to observe her superb performance on the bench. She was universally respected as a judge and as a legal scholar. It is rare to find any judge regarded as well by all who appear before her, as well as her colleagues. She quickly demonstrated that she was a judge who the attorneys practicing before her knew was steadfast, intolerant of artifice, but unfailingly respectful to all. And in these times, when our system of laws and justice are under attack, these qualities are needed more than ever. Her elevation to the Washington State Supreme Court was, to many of us, a foregone conclusion. Anyone who worked with her recognized the power of her intellect and the extent of her sense of fairness. So it is no surprise that in her first year on the Supreme Court, she has already authored a definitive opinion on the application of the Indian Child Welfare Act. It was a decision that came from her full life experience. And who better to do that than Justice Montoya Lewis? She is an enrolled member of the Pueblo of Isleta in New Mexico and a descendant of the Pueblo of Laguna, as well as being of Jewish heritage. Not only is she the first enrolled member of any tribe to sit on a state Supreme Court, but she has lived the experience of being a Native woman in the United States. That gives her not only a unique perspective on issues surrounding Native peoples, but a compassion and understanding heart towards all persons that few possess. Those experiences, compassion, and understanding have been the basis of her ongoing educational endeavors. She has taught judges, lawyers, social workers, and others about implicit bias, and that is not an easy task. But her insights and experiences mean that she imbues what she teaches with a full understanding of what the words and acts of others mean. Those who learn from her receive the highest quality of teaching, that which is not just from the mind, but also from the heart. From the time that she ascended to the Whatcom County Superior Court, she was recognized by her fellow judges as an impressive jurist. From her, I learned much about myself, and I know that all of us were better judges because she led us by example. Her quiet persuasion and unfailing logic could not be ignored because she demanded the best of all of us, something we were all happy to try to give. In times of crisis, she remained steadfast, and when faced with significantly challenging or unpleasant case or decision, could not be deterred from doing what was right and what was just. These qualities made it clear that she was destined for greater things. Justice Montoya Lewis is also an exemplary spouse and parent. Understanding, perseverance, and an unqualified love of family are just one more element of the foundation that makes her such a fine human being. She understands loss, suffering, happiness, and contentment because she has lived all of those emotions. It makes her a complete person, which infuses all of her professional work as well. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention one other of her characteristics, which is a wickedly subtle sense of humor. My advice is don't compete in a punning contest with her, and you will surely lose. I believe that Justice Montoya Lewis is one of those individuals called to her profession by an inner desire for fairness and justice. Her intellect and humanity serve her well in that calling. She cannot do anything less than her best, and her best surpasses most others' best. So it is with the greatest pleasure that I introduce to you Justice Raquel Montoya Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you, Judge Snyder. After me. I state your name.
I, Raquel Montoya Lewis,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Washington,
and the Constitution of the State of Washington,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of the office of Justice
of the office of Justice
of the Supreme Court
of the Supreme Court
of the State of Washington
of the State of Washington
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Now I invite remarks. Justice Montoya Lewis.
Thank you. I'd like to thank my friend and mentor, Judge Snyder, for presenting me today and making those incredibly moving and lovely remarks. And it is a tremendous amount to live up to. As I mentioned last year, when I was very first sworn in before the election, my father raised me to believe that it was critical that I use my education and everything else that I bring with me to serve the people. And he meant that as broadly as it sounds. He meant to serve my own people and to serve everyone that I came in contact with. Over the years, I've been described in many ways, but one has been ambitious. And I've always been a little bit puzzled by that, the use of that word. I'm not someone that began a career seeking higher office like this one. I'm not someone who began a career even really seeking to be a judge. I followed where I was led, both by my heart and by my skills and by my communities, and I've been honored to serve them. It has been an extraordinary year. It was an extraordinary way to run my first contested election, and I could not have won this election without the incredibly steadfast, strong, sometimes critical, always honest support and strength of my colleagues on this bench, my campaign team, my family, and all of the tribes of the state of Washington who supported me both in terms of my campaign with their endorsements and other support, as well as with their very personal words of wisdom to me over the course of a difficult campaign where sometimes my energy or my strength failed me for a moment. I relied very heavily on their words of wisdom that were shared from so many tribal members as well as tribal leaders, and I thank them for their steadfast and ongoing support. Over the last week, I have found my faith in the work that we do somewhat challenged by what we saw happening across the country. In some respects, the first week of 2021 has been one of the longest weeks of my life because it has really made me think about what our role is as a Supreme Court and what my role should be as a justice and how I can serve that role in a way that restores people's faith in their institutions. I don't think we can do that without being conscious of what's happening outside of our temple doors. And I was reminded this morning about a quote that I have had on my office door or inside my office somewhere from the time that I first started as a law clerk for Justice Pamela Minzner in New Mexico. It is a quote from Audre Lorde, and it says, "When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid." So I take this position today to serve the Washington State Supreme Court in my first full 6-year term, recognizing that strength will be demanded of all of us as we move forward, and that we cannot be afraid because our vision is more important. I'm very grateful to be elected to this position. I hope to serve all of the citizens of the state of Washington with humility, clarity, and honesty, and to serve the causes of justice that we were all elected here to serve. Thank you, and I look forward to continued service.
Thank you, Justice Montoya Lewis. We in the state of Washington are fortunate to have you as our colleague. Next, we administer the oath of office to Justice Stevens. Justice Stevens, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Deborah Stevens,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Washington,
and the Constitution of the State of Washington,
and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of Justice
of the office of Justice
of the Supreme Court
of the Supreme Court
of the State of Washington
of the State of Washington
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, and now please we welcome your remarks.
Thank you, Justice Gonzalez. When I was first sworn into the court in January of 2008, I felt overwhelmed with appreciation for the opportunity I had been given and full of energy and passion for the work ahead. Today, 13 years later, that feeling and that passion remain. It is the greatest privilege I can imagine to serve as a justice of this court, especially at this time, in this moment, when the role of the courts has never been more important. I want to thank several people. First, thank you to my benchmates. Through the many challenges of this past year, you have shown strength, courage, and conviction, and have truly embodied the pursuit of justice that is our namesake. I feel so fortunate to work alongside 8 individuals who every day inspire me and challenge me as we strive towards a more equal, open, and accessible system of justice. Like you, I do not take for granted what the voters have given me another 6 years to do this great work, and I'm profoundly thankful. I also want to express my appreciation to the entire Temple of Justice family, the dedicated public servants in the offices and chambers and state law library. And a special thanks to my chambers team. 2020 was a year of transition, and I want to acknowledge and thank my longtime judicial administrative assistant, Judy Vandervoort, who retired after 35 years with the Supreme Court, and longtime judicial assistant in the Chief's office, Stella Agricola, a mere rookie with 25 years of service to the court. And when they retired in November, I was blessed to have Sonia Avila join my team as my JAA, and she hit the ground running. And Sonia, I'm looking forward to many years of working with you. Let me also thank my current law clerks, Seth Dawson and Kylie Fisher. You have been a virtual dynamic duo, and I look forward to the day when we are able to sit around a real table together and talk law. I want to thank the many judges, administrators, court staff, and justice partners across Washington with whom I've had the good fortune of working so closely this past year as we responded to the impacts of the pandemic in the judicial branch. Your resiliency, creativity, and commitment to finding new and better ways to deliver justice has made this past year transformative. I look forward to our continued work, knowing the judicial branch is stronger when we work together. And finally, I want to thank my family, who are my heart and my home. Craig, Lindsay, and Bob, you've been there through all the ups and downs, and I love you more than words can say. And to the entire large and loud Stevens and Williams bunch, I thank you for your love and support. We have found new ways, as have all families, to stay connected during a pandemic, but I look forward to the day soon when we can all meet at the Snake River to share an epic group hug and, to quote Sean Prine, perhaps catch a few fish. As we enter 2021, I'm full of optimism and hope for the days ahead. I want to congratulate my fellow justices being sworn in 2021. My newest colleagues, Justice Montoya Lewis and Justice Whitener, who are celebrating their first elections as justices of the Washington Supreme Court, and our senior member, Charles Johnson, who's being sworn in for an unprecedented 6th term. And congratulations especially to Chief Justice Gonzalez. Your election is historic, and I know you will lead this court and the entire judicial branch with vision and passion. I'm excited to work with you and support you in every way I can in this good work. Today, I celebrate with all of you, and I look with optimism toward the future. Every new challenge that arises, we will all meet together, and we will help bend the arc of the moral universe ever towards justice. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Stevens, and congratulations on your re-election. I too look forward to working together. Next, as you indicated in your remarks, we get to administer the oath for what is your 6th time, I believe, Justice Johnson, elected to this Supreme Court by the people of the state of Washington. Please raise your right hand And once you're off mute, I'll start the oath.
Good catch, Chief.
All right. I state your name,
I, Charles W. Johnson,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Washington,
and the Constitution of the State of Washington,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties
discharge the duties
of the office of Justice
of the Office of Justice
of the Supreme Court
of the Supreme Court
of the State of Washington
of the State of Washington
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my abilities.
Congratulations, and we now welcome your remarks.
Thank you, Chief. One benefit or drawback of going last is much of what I had prepared to say has already been said by my colleagues and probably said a lot better than I could. Let me just say this. I echo and embrace the comments of each of my colleagues. And let me start by saying also that it has been an honor and a privilege to serve on the Washington State Supreme Court. And as I begin my 31st year, I'm going to reflect a little bit and thank and recognize a few of those who have supported my work and made my job a lot easier. And let me focus, as one of my colleagues did, on our staff who supports the work of our chambers and contributes to the work of the court. I've often said one of the best parts of my job is working with our law clerks. We each get two. I rotate mine annually. They represent the best and the brightest of their graduating class. And what a joy for me to be able to work with and have conversations with those deep thinkers, those young people, those divergent outlooks and experiences who bring with them superior research, writing, and thinking skills. It's just been a joy. I've had the benefit of working with 57 law clerks during my tenure, each of whom I've learned from and I thank for their contribution to my work. They certainly make my work a lot easier and to the work of the court. You've already heard about the excellent staff we have at the building, and I won't repeat that other than to recognize that the work of the court is processed by not only us, but by a support staff that is highly professional and efficient, and for whom I'm thankful and grateful. Most importantly, I have to recognize my wife, Dana. Our mutual love and support for each other makes each of us better people, without which I'm sure my life would have been a lot emptier. And with that support and that love, I've become a better person over the time of our marriage. You know, one thing, even though I'm starting my 31st year and others are starting their career, we share one thing, and it's important to recognize, but our time is finite. There's someone who came before us in this position, and there's someone who follows us. And with that recognition comes a responsibility, has been alluded to already, to work to improve the efficiency, fairness, and the equity of the justice system. And it's just been my honor to have worked in those areas. One of my colleagues has a saying that I have embraced, and I think it's important for all of us because I'm really proud of each of my colleagues. The saying is, and it guides our judicial philosophy, it goes, do all the good you can, in all the ways you can, to all the people you can, in every place you can, at all the times you can for as long as you can. It's the responsibility of this office and one that I have embraced. And I hope when my tenure ends, to look back and say I made a positive contribution to the working and the lives of others. Chief Justice Gonzalez, thank you.
Thank you, Justice Johnson. Congratulations. And I look forward, as I know all of us do, to working with you here on the court together, emerging from this pandemic. In a moment, we're going to hear the wise words of Rabbi Goldstein, and I hope you'll stay with us for that. Before we do, I want to just mention that normally I would then acknowledge the dignitaries who are here in the room with us representing the Attorney General or the Attorney General himself or the bar presidents or the different levels of court. Now there are no guests in the courtroom. It's me and the tech staff making this possible. I look forward to the time when we can actually have a reception and invite you in, recognize you, raise a glass together, and celebrate our emergence from these difficult times. Until then, I will end with a poem, which you'll be glad to hear is haiku, so it's quite short. Uchitokete korito mizu no nakanaori, which means, while melting, ice and water resolve their differences. May we in the sunshine be like ice and water this year, resolving our differences. Now, it is my pleasure to call on Rabbi Seth Goldstein of the Temple Beth Hatfiloh to offer the benediction. Rabbi.
Thank you, Chief Justice. It's an honor to be here. Source of all life, we ask for your blessing upon this body. As we gather in this virtual space, we are reminded of the challenges of the past year, challenges that we are still enduring. These are difficult times, forcing us to make personal sacrifices in order to protect one another. We hope and we pray that the specter of this virus be swiftly removed from our land and the world. And yet, as we gather in this virtual space today, we are reminded that justice does not exist because of hallowed halls and courtrooms. It is not handed down because of robes and gavels. Justice exists within the hearts and souls of those who uphold the primacy of law, who are guided by fairness and compassion, who value the sanctity of human relationship and community. May those who serve on this court continue to embody that spirit. This past year has also been a difficult one for our democracy. And time again, we have seen that it is the courts that have held in check the baser instincts of those who would wish to overturn our institutions and disrupt our civic norms. May this court continue to uphold the values of our state and nation in the face of those who would seek to unsettle them. To our new Chief Justice, may you guide this body with commitment and care, vision and humility, modeling both courage and empathy. To all of our justices, may all of you bring your whole selves to this work. May the diversity of experience represented in this body result in the execution of justice that recognizes and honors the wholeness and holiness of all who stand before this court and all the residents of the state you serve. May your fidelity to the law and its interpretation result in rulings that uplift the traditions and ideals of our state and its constitution, as well as uplift all of us who are affected by those rulings. May you show each other the same respect in both assent and dissent as you work together with wisdom and creativity for the common good. We read in scripture, Simcha letzaddik asot mishpat, umechita lefoalei aven. When justice is done, it brings joy to the righteous and terror to the evildoer. May all of us strive for righteousness so that we may receive your justice with joy. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you to everyone. There being no further business before the court this morning, the court is adjourned.